Spring Television. Ours it is.
Welcome to Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now the headlines. Nigeria's Council of State asks CBN governor to make new Naira notes available or recirculate old ones. More than 22,000 people have now died after Monday's earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Moldovan Prime Minister announces her government is resigning after turbulent 18 months in power. My name is Tunde Ido. Members of the Council of State have asked Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, Godwin Emefiele, to make new Naira notes available or recirculate old Naira notes to ease the sufferings of Nigerians. At a meeting of the Council today, the members expressed support for the Naira redesign policy of the CBN. The meeting held today at the Presidential Villa was presided over to President Muhammadu Buhari, Governor of Taraba Dairos Ishaku, Governor of Lagos Babatunde Sanwo-Olu, and Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Abubakar Malami jointly briefed State House correspondents on the outcome of the meeting. Former heads of state Yakubu Gowon and Abdul Salami Abubakar were in attendance at the meeting, while former President Goodluck Jonathan was also present. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo joined virtually, while several governors, including Osun State Governor Ademola Adeleke, were physically present at the meeting. Meanwhile, as the back and forth over the deadline of the Central Bank of Nigeria's cash swap policy continues, Nigerians have expressed confusion as to the position of the federal government and the CBN on the ex parte order given by the Supreme Court. This is amidst increasing difficulty in getting both old and new Naira notes. Emmanuel Ujuadugele has the rest of the story. We'll bring you that story in our subsequent bulletins. Moving on to Rivers State, Director General of the People's Democratic Party Presidential Campaign Council in the state, Abiye Sekubo, says he escaped assassination by the Whiskers at midnight. It was learned that gunmen dressed in police uniform opened fire on Dr. Sekibo's bulletproof vehicle at the Rainbow Town in Port Harcourt, where he went to inspect the venue of a proposed presidential rally of the party. Confirming the incident at a news briefing, Dr. Sekibo said his car was riddled with bullets and the venue of the proposed rally set on fire while policemen watched the inferno. He alleged that policemen who were watching the inferno opened fire on his vehicle, adding that the police Hilux vehicles he saw at the venue were attached to the governor of Rivers State. And news outside Nigeria, more than 22,000 people are now known to have died after Monday's earthquake in southern Turkey and northern Syria. 6 United Nations lorries carrying aid have now crossed the borders from Turkey into Syria, making it the first international help people in Syria have had. But aid workers in northern Syria are desperate for more help, with one doctor saying there is not enough medical supplies for even 20% of those in need. The situation on the ground in northern Syria has been described as absolutely catastrophic by Syria's civil defense group, the White Helmets. Meanwhile, rescuers in Turkey and Syria are continuing their painstaking work, but hopes are fading for many people still trapped under the rubble. Footage has emerged of a newborn baby and his mother, who were rescued from rubble in Turkey around 90 hours after the first of Monday's deadly earthquake. The 10-day-old boy named Yagiz was retrieved from a ruined structure in the southern Haiti province, a site described by local media as miraculous.
The earthquake that struck Turkey and Syria is one of the biggest natural disasters in our times. Just hours ago, the first United Nations convoy crossed into northern Syria through the Bab al-Awa crossing. It included 6 trucks carrying shelter and other desperately needed relief supplies. More help is on the way, but much more is needed. We have all seen the heart-wrenching images and the heroic efforts of humanitarians battling the elements, the clock, and the odds to save lives. We mourn the loss of so many, and the tragic toll keeps growing. Thousands of buildings have collapsed. Tens of thousands of people are exposed to unforgiving winter conditions. Schools and hospitals have been destroyed. Children are enduring terrible trauma. And we are sadly aware that we haven't yet seen the full extent of the damage and of the humanitarian crisis unfolding before.
In the meantime, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has admitted that the government response to Monday's earthquake has not been as fast as he had hoped. Mr. Erdogan has faced criticism from survivors about an insufficient number of rescuers and humanitarian aid being delivered in the first days after the earthquake. Speaking to reporters in the southern city of Adiyaman, which was also hit by the quake, he said so many buildings were damaged. He also said some people were robbing markets and attacking businesses, adding that a state of emergency declared in the area will allow the state to impose the necessary penalties. Similarly, Syria's President Bashir al-Assad has been shown on Syrian TV meeting rescue workers at the site of a collapsed building in government-held Aleppo. It is Assad's first public visit to an area affected by the earthquake. Much of Aleppo was destroyed in the civil war, which broke out in 2011 when a peaceful uprising against Assad turned into violence. And elsewhere, Ukrainian and Moldovan officials says Russia's latest aerial attack on Ukraine saw missiles cross Moldovan airspace. Kiev's top general said 2 missiles fired from the Black Sea flew above the neighboring country, something confirmed in Chisinau. The general also said the missile crossed NATO members Romania, something Romania disputes. Moldova has summoned the Russian ambassador, having done the same following a similar incident in October. The Ukrainian Air Force said 71 missiles were fired in Friday's massive attack, of which it shot down 61. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has said he is considering stripping Vladimir Putin of France's top honor. The Russian leader was presented with the Legion d'Honneur in 2006 by former French President Jacques Chirac. The title is the highest French order of merit, both military and civil, and was established in 1802 by Napoleon Bonaparte. But Mr. Macron said he is waiting for the right moment to strip the Russian president of the title. He was speaking after awarding Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky the honor yesterday. You're watching Spring Global on Western Spring Television. We'll be back after the short break. Please stay with us.
James Ajibola Ige was a lawyer who obtained his first degree in classics from Nigeria's premier University of Ibadan. Born September 13, 1930, the orator and the polyglot spoke impeccable English, French, Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba languages. His fine diction placed him among classical orators and public speakers like Cicero, the Roman orator. This attribute earned him the prefix Cicero of Esauke. He authored Kaduna Boy, an autobiography, Detainee's Diary, Constitution, and the People, among 6 other books. Bola Ige was a colorful politician, elected governor Oyo State in 1979 and appointed a federal minister in 1999. He was a pioneer founder of Afenifere, the Yoruba social, cultural, and political group. He invested his political sagacity to propel the group to the height of political leadership and decision-making in the southwest of Nigeria. Bola Ige was assassinated on the 20th, an old walled town and capital of the Hausa state of Zazzau. Amina was a great warrior and the first woman to rule the ancient kingdom of Zazzau. Her 34 years as queen witnessed an unprecedented expansion of Zazzau by conquests. Queen Amina of Zaria belongs to the class of Amazons by the might of her army and her strings of conquests. She opened Zaria to trans-border trade and was said to have initiated kola nut cultivation in the ancient kingdom. The Hausa Muslim figure was born in 1533 and died in 1610 at the age of 77 years. Folklores remember Aminatu, the queen of Zazzau, as a brave, smart, and talented leader, whose giant statue now adorns the National Arts Theatre in Lagos, Nigeria, while many educational institutions bear her name. Western Spring Television identifies Queen Amina as a watershed character in history. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet of a human activist against segregation by the minority of white suprematists in South Africa. At the climax of his trial for treason, orchestrated by the minority South African government, the great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island, described as the most notorious prison in the world. It was from this same prison that he came out as a free man to assume office as South Africa's first black president in 1994. Western Spring Television identifies Nelson Mandela as a watershed character in history.
Welcome back. We'll bring you that story we brought to you earlier. As the back and forth over the deadline of the Central Bank of Nigeria CBN's cash policy swap continues, Nigerians have expressed confusion as to the position of the federal government and the CBN on the ex-parte order given by the Supreme Court. This is amidst increasing difficulty in getting both old and new Naira notes. Emmanuel Ujuadugele completes the story.
A politician with that policy say nonsense. Yeah. Say yes. Yes. Any politician with that policy say nonsense. Yes. It's a nonsense.
Rubbish. Totally rubbish.
Confusion, apprehension, anger. This is what the average Nigerian feels at the moment. From sleeping at automated teller machines ATMs to traveling tens of kilometers without access to their own hard-earned money, residents of Osun State seem to be boiling over.
Ẹlòmíín wà bank látàná báyìí tó sùn tó jẹ́ pé láti bí ìjọ́ mẹ́ta ẹlòmíín sùn ká tún gbọ́ pé a ní bóyá bí 20 or 20 something banks ní Òṣogbo ká wá gbọ́ pé yọkan pé loan dispense change owó kò ṣe dandan ká change owó àwa lẹ change owó fún àwa iná lẹ́ fi yà jẹ gbogbo àwọn politician náà ti lówó nílé kí wọ́n kó owó jáde wọ́n jẹ́ káwa olówó kéèké rówó iná.
Ẹ wo ìnira yẹn ti pọ̀jù fún wa kọ́lọ́n kó àti tòfọ́ ni mo ti dé bí báyìí lẹ́ni láti ọjọ́ Monday mi ti rí 10,000 naira gbà ọmọ yìí gan wá padà gbé bá mi níbí báyìí ní bá ṣe ń jí kúrò lé nìyẹn stress yẹn náà dẹ̀ dínkù lójoojúmọ́ bí ẹni pé nǹkan lè sí ni ìgbà tó dẹ̀ ti ní ká tún máa ná old note padà old note eléyìí tó ti wà nù báǹkì bóyá tó máa tún fi síta wàhálà yìí tún máa dínkù ìnira yẹn ti pọ̀jù honestly Ọlọ́run ọba ń gbọ́.
The frustration is further compounded by the uncertainty around the ex-parte order of the Supreme Court regarding the cash swap deadline and last night's countdown by the Central Bank of Nigeria despite that order. This confusion is not lost on customers like Mr. Oluwatosin Adesina and Sunday Oluwafemi.
We are confused. Rather, from what the policy has stated that the new Naira note should be deposited in the bank, and the extension of the new Naira loan to February 10, which is today, the deadline. And looking at the situation of things now, we don't know. Maybe the stand of the Supreme Court will still come to pass, to stand on the ground, especially on what is happening now.
We are suffering. People have been queued on this ATM since 5 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the night. People are not sleeping at home. They are suffering. You can see the queue. You can see many people in the ATM. People, okay, now we go into the bank. We can only withdraw 3,000 naira. In this economy of the situation in Nigeria, how can we take 3,000 naira? Even in this situation now, how can you take 3,000 naira to buy anything in this country?
With babies crying in their arms, some their money. For the elderly who cannot stand on queues, the hot ground of bank premises is where they find some sort of uncomfortable comfort. Other residents like Mrs. Ifunaya Ogwinyande, who have spent hours and days in banking halls and ATMs, believe strongly that the government is insensitive to their plight.
People are suffering. People are suffering. As you can see, our children at home. We do not see people are suffering. Look at us. Look at us inside. All the accountants are inside bank with AC, and we've been here from Monday to night. We did not see a couple.
Another resident, Ali Bak, wants decisive actions, including an address by the president.
People are coming there from 24/7. People are sleeping there. People came from Ejigbo yesterday. Ejigbo. See this man. Another man came from. Some people came from Ire. From Ijebu-Jesha. That's not done.
For point-of-sale POS operators like Mrs. Zainab Ali, the lack of clarity coupled with the unavailability of cash has caused a halt in business.
We are confused about either the old note is ended or not. We are confused. But see, we are not collecting any old note for now because the CBN does not say anything about it. So we are not collecting it.
Legal practitioner Bukola Onifade attempts to clear up the apparent confusion. First, he says the state governments that instituted the suit against the federal government may have made a fundamental error.
No, as it is, the Central Bank of Nigeria was never a party to that, so they deliberately, maybe by mistake or deliberately, did not join them as a party because of the fact that if they have to join Central Bank as a party, they have to start from the High Court or Federal High Court of Nigeria. Now, if they are failed to do that, the original jurisdiction, if there is a case between the state government and the federal government, the original jurisdiction would be the Supreme Court, which they have run to. Fine. But now, let me now say this. Aside from the fact that Central Bank of Nigeria is not a party, and let me also say this to you. Central Bank of Nigeria is they have their autonomy, they are independent body that did not have the federal government did not have total control over them.
Mr. Onifade then says when the substantive suit is heard by the Supreme Court, the outcome may yet be unpopular with the average Nigerian.
is a fundamental issue, which I don't want to preempt the decision of the court. I don't know what the court is going to say, but it's a fundamental issue which the court will look at. Whether the courts...
Is there poor information on the intricacies of the cash swap deadline? The unavailability of cash is crippling businesses, stifling households, and whipping up strong sentiments in ordinary citizens. However, at the end of today's Council of State meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari, it has been resolved that the Central Bank of Nigeria makes new Naira note available or recirculate old Naira note to ease the suffering of Nigerians who now wait to see the import of this resolution. Emmanuel Ujadigele, Western Spring Television News.
Moldovan Prime Minister Natalia Gavrilita today announced that her government was resigning after a turbulent 18 months in power marked by economic turmoil and the aftershocks of Russia's war on Ukraine. Speaking to a news briefing, she expressed belief that the country will be able to make it through all difficulties and challenges. The former Soviet Republic country of 2.5 million has suffered from soaring inflation and was strained last year by an influx of Ukrainian refugees. It also suffered power cuts following Russian air attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure and has struggled to break its dependence on Russian gas. And in Africa, South Africa's president has declared a state of disaster to try to deal with the energy crisis. Cyril Ramaphosa's announcement gives the government additional powers to tackle crippling electricity shortages that have worsened in recent months. He insisted South Africa will emerge as a more efficient energy network. The president was making an annual address to Parliament, which was repeatedly disrupted by the opposition. There was chaos in the chamber before his speech, and at one point, members of the economic freedom fighters stormed the podium before being forced to leave. Mr. Ramaphosa also said access to the witness protection program for whistleblowers that expose government corruption was underway. To address the rising cost of living, Mr. Ramaphosa extended the relief funding, which is earned by more than 8 million unemployed South Africans.
I will appoint a Minister of Electricity in the presidency to assume full responsibility for overseeing all aspects of the electricity crisis response, including the work of the National Energy Crisis Committee. Now, the minister will focus full-time on the work with the ESCOM board and the management on ending load shedding and ensuring that the Energy Action Plan is implemented without delay.
The foreign ministers of Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso have called for their country's reinstatement into two regional blocs that suspended them after a recent military coup. In a joint statement, the ministers said they had agreed to work together to push for the lifting of their suspension from the African Union and the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. Abdoulaye Diop of Mali, Morisanda Koyate of Guinea, and Burkina's Olivia Ouagadougou, where they agreed to pool their efforts and undertake joint initiative for the lifting of the suspension measures and other restrictions taken by the AU and ECOWAS. And going to the exciting world of sports, Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp has defended his decision to give his players 2 days off at the start of the week, saying it made sense. The decision followed Liverpool's 3-0 loss to Wolves last weekend. Speaking ahead of Monday's game with Everton, Klopp said after they spoke to each other, the players were given 2 days off because of the distance between Saturday and Monday.
There are a few problems. So when in a best possible period we ever had, it's very easy to have press conference, very easy, because you don't ask really important questions. It's like, oh my God, he scored 3 goals and stuff like this, and these kind of things. And we have a laugh together and all these kind of things. It's nice. Then it's not going well, and of course you cannot explain the similar mistakes 500 times in a different way, or then always new mistakes. So if we make them and we go for it, it's really not easy. And you know it. It's not disrespectful when I say you cannot deal with it, because if some of you make of the things I say make massive things, that was not my intention. So I try to get through this without. I'm responsible for it. So, and if you blame me, but if I talk Henderson, it's Henderson is not there and he's not there and these kind of things. So I have to be careful with this guy because I don't want to do it. So that's why it's so difficult to talk all the time about things like this. That's why it's really helpful if you've been at least from time to time.
Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola says the team have already been condemned over alleged financial rules breaches. The Premier League charged City with more than 100 breaches of its financial rules on Monday. But Guardiola said he is fully convinced the club will be innocent. A 2-year ban from European competitions for breaching UEFA's financial fair play regulations was overturned by the Court of Arbitration for Sports in 2020.
You accuse us. They should be out. But between these 9 teams before and these 19 teams now, between the word of them or the word of my people, I'm sorry, I rely on the word of my people.
So you didn't have to have an address with the players?
We did. The club, okay. I talked with all of us, but I didn't speak. We're training like normal to try to beat Aston Villa.
And you're confident that they won't be distracted?
Before we end Spring Global, here is a recap of our top stories. Members of the Council of State have asked Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele, to make new Naira notes available or recirculate old Naira notes to ease the sufferings of Nigerians. More than 22,000 people are now known to have died after Monday's earthquake in southern Turkey and northern Syria. Moldovan Prime Minister Natalia Gavrilita today announced that her government was resigning after a turbulent 18 months in power marked by economic turmoil and the aftershocks of Russian war on neighboring Ukraine. You can follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. I am Tunde Ido. Thank you for viewing. Good evening.